I believe that until and unless someone can establish that the unborn child is not a living human being, then that child is already protected by the Constitution, which guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I have a hard time believing that Jesus, for instance, would approve abortion.
Every infant born alive, including an infant who survives an abortion procedure, is considered a person under federal law.
We shouldn't have to remind people that when it comes to a woman's health, no politician should get to decide what's best for her.
I am pro-life, yes.
What is ban? How do you ban abortion?
50 years ago last year.
The 1960s marked a decade of change for women in America. 30 years after women's suffrage, women had grown into an undeniable presence in the American workforce and political system. The 1960s marked a shift from the feminist goals as more seemed achievable. This was called second-wave feminism. 1966 marked the formation of the National Organization for Women, a coalition of feminists supporting grassroots activism. Women began to protest for the right to have an abortion. As the hippie movement and the anti-war movement grew in popularity, women saw their opportunity. But as the movement grew, so did the opposition. Anti-abortion legislation was a direct backlash of women's suffrage and the right for equality between genders. This greatly hindered the women's right movement and restricted a woman's right to choose. With the restrictions on abortion came illegal abortions. This practice was almost always dangerous and put the life of the mother in great risk. The following clip elaborates on first-hand experiences women have had with abortion before Roe v. Wade.
Someone gave her a hanger abortion, perforated her uterus and her bowel, and by the time she came to the hospital, she was in septic shock and she died.
The pain was so outrageous that I do remember leaving my body. I didn't scream, but I do remember it was the feeling that I was up out of my body looking down on it.
In 1971, Heather Booth, a 29-year-old student at the University of Chicago, started an underground network called Jane that counseled and helped women who wanted to get abortions. The group performed approximately 11,000 first and second trimester abortions with no deaths reported. It was active for 7 years and ended shortly after the decision of Roe v. Wade. Some members were discovered and arrested, but were released when abortion was legalized, 6 months after. Ted O'Connor, the detective originally put on the case, reflects back on the arrest, contemplating, "My side is, I don't want to see a life destroyed. That life is helpless. It has no choice in this, and that angers me. On the other hand, I've never been pregnant and never will be."
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government.
In December 1971, a pregnant 21-year-old woman decided to challenge the current laws in Texas regarding abortion. This decision changed the lives of women ever since. The original law had stated that abortion was deemed illegal unless it was necessary to save the life of the mother. This legislation was put in place and had remained unaltered until 1854. The couple John and Mary Doe also filed similar complaints regarding the unconstitutionality of the anti-abortion law. Due to non-threatening medical complications, the couple also sought to change the legislation in order to receive a safe and legal abortion, if one was needed. The case was decided in January 1973 in favor of Jane Roe, and federally making abortion legal in all states during the first trimester of a pregnancy. This law, however, allows for many amendments and alterations to be made state by state. States can individually choose the length at which abortions will be legal after the first trimester, as well as the consent necessary for a physician to perform an abortion on a minor. Here's Norma McCorvey, Jane Roe, almost 30 years after Roe v. Wade.
I would like to see Roe versus Wade overturned. I have 3 daughters and have never had an abortion. However, upon knowing God, I realized that my case, which legalized abortion on demand, was the biggest mistake of my life.
The companion case of Roe v. Wade was Doe v. Bolton, a case that ruled that Georgia law regulating abortion was unconstitutional. The law required to get an approval from multiple physicians, and on top of that, only women who had been raped, whose lives were in danger from the pregnancy, or who were carrying fetuses likely to be malformed, were allowed to receive abortions. The Supreme Court ruled that the requirements did not comply with the 14th Amendment. Doe v. Bolton was decided on the same day as Roe v. Wade, both changing the way women were able to receive abortions. Here's a video clip from a news segment on the decision day.
To raise the dignity of woman and give her freedom of choice in this area is an extraordinary event. And I think that January 22nd, 1973 would be an historic day.
In this instance, the Supreme Court has withdrawn protection for the human rights of unborn children, and it is teaching people that abortion is a rather innocuous procedure provided that there are proper legal safeguards. I think that the judgment of the court will do a great deal to tear down the respect previously accorded human life in our culture.
After Roe v. Wade, the rights of women changed drastically. With the legalization of abortion, the average age of marrying for women in the United States went up from 20 to 27. This substantial increase is due to the social and religious pressures put on women to marry the father of their child, even if their child is unplanned or unwanted. The ruling also altered the economic status of women. Whereas before, women were often disadvantaged due to lower wages as well as the inability to terminate a pregnancy that they were not financially stable enough to carry through. Due to new legislation, if a woman could not support raising a child or paying for pregnancy-related medical charges, she no longer had to. Roe v. Wade progressed women's rights by loosening the often perceived notion that the only purpose for a woman is to be a mother. Once abortion became legal, women no longer were forced into the cyclical lifestyle and were given the right to choose, not only for their reproductive life, but for their futures. Here's Chelsea Clinton with her views on abortion.
Wait about this, right? It is not a disconnected fact to Justice T-shirt of 1973 that American women entering the labor force from 1970 to 2009 added $3.5 trillion to our economy. Right? Like the net new entrance of women. That is not disconnected from the fact that Roe became the law of the land in January of 1973.
Is it right to use a hitman to solve a problem? You can't do that. It's not right to end a human life, however small, to solve a problem. It's like hiring a contract killer to solve a problem.
The Supreme Court ruling of legalizing abortion has divided not only politics in the United States, but leaders and influential figures all over the world. Among the population in the U.S., views on abortion have remained nearly unchanged in the past 15 years. A new CNN USA Today Gallup survey found that 38% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in most or all circumstances. 42% believe that it should be available in a few circumstances, such as to save the mother's life, and 18% say that abortion should never be legal. In the most recent election, we could see the division between parties on the controversial issue. Here, President Trump and Hillary Clinton discussed their views.
Opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court, I will say this: it will go back to the state.
I'll defend Planned Parenthood. I will defend Roe v. Wade, and I will defend women's rights to make their own health care decisions. And we have come too far to have that turned back now.
The Supreme Court's decision of Roe v. Wade changed abortion laws throughout the country and was a triumph because it benefited the progression of women's rights. However, it was also a tragedy because the ruling divided the country due to political and social standpoints.
America will eventually have one abortion for every 2 births.